Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter
440.
It is the fourth day of the week, aka the Buster Cannon workout. I'm feeling very good right now. Very excited for this workout. Very annoyed that this is the second time I'm doing this part because my microphone isn't on. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today, the interchange between the feminine and the masculine. So a few episodes back, I looked at looks maxing. You can see that episode right here. But I talked in that episode just briefly about how it was how one of the criticisms against looks maxing was the fact that it's a very gay way of doing something like looking better and such. And although that is a reductionist way of looking at it and thinking of it, there is something that isn't necessarily accurate to that. And I think that looking at the interchange between the sexes in both terms, the masculine and the feminine of things, is a good idea, specifically because there is an imbalance to each side that could happen with each other. And when that happens, you get more of a certain sense of that coming out. So it's an interesting dichotomy that a lot of people are kind of ignoring when it comes to something like looks maxing, because obviously that is a niche market where people are going about something that is technically like just regular, but they are going about it in a quote unquote feminine way, which is do makeup and all the like cosmetic surgeries and all these other things. But I think what it is that's very interesting about it is that there is a dynamic there that not a lot of people kind of overlook a lot, which is the inner balance between the masculine and feminine, because it is a balancing act. And I think that a lot of people dismiss it most of the time, understandably so, because I think that we've been conditioned to be extremes on one end or the other. But obviously, you can see that both things are required, regardless of whether you would like to think it is or isn't, because certain aspects of life require both things. Not to say that they are mandatory per se for everybody for every single point in life, but also there are certain qualities that will come up once you are in certain situations that may or may not be needed for you to have, But that's just kind of a baseline level of it, because I think that it's a greater subject matter, to say the least, as we look into it a little bit more. And it's a very interesting balancing act that a lot of people like to ignore a lot of the time. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that, the interplay and how it affects both sides of the coin, really, and how the interchange between the two is a very important balancing act that you have to kind of understand in a certain sense, because a lot of people choose not to understand or choose to go one way without balancing it out and never realizing, oh, if I don't balance it out, things just get skewed. There's an extremity that happens a lot, and that's causing a lot of inner turmoil in people generally. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that and a few other things when we get to Mother Pace.
All right, so started this day off with good mornings, which were pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today, the interchange between the feminine and the masculine. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because this is something that comes up quite often, especially when talking about a lot of social cues and social things that happen in today's world, because of the fact that in many different extremes, those are usually the ones that get pushed up to the top for some weird reason in the algorithms that make it so that people will look at the extremes and see that this is like the most important thing, when in reality there is some semblance of balance between the two, but we'll get to that in a second. I think that the biggest part is understanding both sides, whether it be feminine or masculine, and understanding the inner place and inner between workings of how they would work together within oneself. I think a lot of people like to think of themselves as one or the other. Of course, they are predominantly one or the other, but there is natural things that come up that are from the other side. I think that a lot of this stuff will come up naturally. If you want an example of this from each side, you look at the dad who doesn't want the dog, and then all of a sudden is loving and caring for the dog. And then you have the other side where you you have the woman who ends up becoming the friend zoner or the rejecter of men, really. And there is an evilness to that in a certain sense, but not necessarily fully evil. That's a whole kind of a different story for a different day. But the entire point of it is the reason why we would have these types of things in us is because we need the balance between the two as we allow ourselves to be the yin and yang of the world, really, and very much representative of what should be happening within ourselves. Like to go to one extreme, not realizing they need some type of softness from the other side or hardness from the other side. When you discuss something like yin and yang, you see the symbol within, and you see the little bit of the other within this, the color, you know, the black within the white within the black. I think that's very representative of what we are like when we're discussing the masculine and the feminine. If you are a man, you are more hard on the outside. You are tougher on the outside. You have to be tougher for the world. You know, you have to have more of an exterior that is prepared to take on the world, whilst the inside may be a little softer, a little bit more warmer, especially for those things that cannot be defensive for themselves, which is a perfect balance of what the masculine would represent. You know, whenever you have the ability to control the hardness whenever you need to, the anger, the things that represent masculinity, you have the feminine within you to control it, to understand that sometimes there are things and people and situations where you don't necessarily need to turn it on, or you can turn it off, or be gracious dealing with animals or something like that. For the other side, for women, when you imagine them being, soft and caring and nurturing as it is in their nature, but they have to be evil and callous to make sure that they are not taken advantage of by others who may want to do harm to them, not only in spiritually, but physically as well as being the arbiters to deny whomever they want to for whatever internal reasons they give them. So trying to make sure they don't get fucked over by someone, selection that is actually good for them, so then that way they aren't fucked over by the mate selection that they have. So in this scenario, both sides are extremely important, especially because once you understand somewhat of the exterior outlooks upon whichever one you have, the other side can help you disable it in a slight way, so then that way you can actually do it. Unfortunately, because of how things are nowadays, people want to see the only extremes where things can never really be balanced, because things that aren't balanced out don't get actually pushed in the algorithm. Instead, you get the most extreme versions of these selves. People get influenced in order to maximize these extremities, which is only causing more issues as people become less whole and become more one-sided, which is causing a lot of issues frictionally with just social situations where people are either extremely one way or extremely the other way, whether it's what they were naturally are or something the complete opposite, which makes it so it's harder and tougher to connect with others if you aren't actually on the same page internally.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercise is not filmed, none. Exercise is skipped. We have one, split squats, because my left knee is deciding to say fuck you. So, had to skip it. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. The interchange between the feminine and the masculine. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because this is a very interesting concept, which I think gets lost with a lot of people. I don't think that it is something that you should heavily lean towards, but more so understanding how both sides of the spectrum work within yourself. Because I think that if you tap into one side too much, regardless of which side it is, of course you're going to lean towards one side, and obviously there are limits to it. But if you don't tap into the other side at certain points or in certain situations, it could lead to disastrous results. Whether it be something as simple as, showing some emotion at a funeral, be hard at a tough time, you know what I mean? It's a interesting balancing act that has to happen, so then that way you're malleable to the things that are happening in society. I think that nowadays, because of how not only social media, not only free radicals and free estrogens and all the shit that we have in our clothing and food and all this other stuff, which are making our hormones go fucking apeshit. I think that those types of things are getting us out of balance and making it so that these extremes that we see or feel are more pronounced than they once were. You know, a lot of people who always talk about, like, you know, meditation or shit like that, they always talk about it, but never really actually talk about the balancing act that it's supposed to be, you know? And I think that a lot of the time it's the getting rid of the type of stuff that's in the brain that's the extremes of one end and try to get it out, you know? These things are interconnected as much as we would like to think that they are separate, and technically they are separate, but at the same time, just like the yin yang symbol being the ultimate representation of good and evil, there is a little bit of the other one in the center of each of them. So even though they are synergistically different, together they create the whole, and then even within the whole there is a little bit of the other one in them. So there is a balance that comes along with something like the masculine and the feminine. And I think that a lot of people don't want that. They want a one-sided thing or take advantage of one side or another, whether you lean a little bit one way or the other. And this isn't like global political or anything like that, because this is more of the spirituality of the individual, whether they believe in something or something else, they will lean towards one way if they are specifically towards, let's say, the feminine, or they will lean the other way if they are more towards the masculine. But like I said, the balancing act in such a thing is such an important thing to master, specifically within the individual, because a lot of people will not master it and will only dive deep into whatever they lean towards, and that can lead to a lot of disastrous results, leading to possibly even death on both ends, because once you get into the nitty-gritty of each side, it is either a lot of things can come up that will make it so that the person unrelentingly just throws their life away. So it is an interesting dynamic, but hopefully you understand this. And with that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Not a random one. This one I've talked about before, and I would love to talk about it more. This is a very interesting dynamic for me personally. We will talk eventually about the woman, the mysterious woman in dreams again, and as well as other people or other people you know in dreams, as well as the man in your dreams, or you in your dreams if you're a guy watching this. We'll talk about that some other day. But with that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, and stay warm. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace!